All right, here we are. Doug, Montana, Midtown Title. Thank you for being here.
Absolutely.
So I've got an agenda in terms of what I do in terms of asking questions and everything along those lines, and then from there we'll kind of run a few things down and just keep it real free flowing and easy. So everybody wants to know. Tell me a little bit about yourself. Tell me about the company. Tell me your role in the company and why you're the best at what you do.
You
The
want
best, yeah.
You want to start us?
So I'm Montana McNaughton. I'm Business Development Officer at Midtown Title, Ishmael Law Firm. We are an attorney fee office for Independence Title, centrally located, been around 15 plus years. And I would say our leadership team has over 115 years of experience.
And I'm Douglas Plummer. I'm the managing director of the office, and we started it back in 2006. So we've gone through one kind of up and down cycle already. So we're kind of used to it.
So one of the things that I always in these few episodes that we've done recently, we know our industry in general is slightly slow. And one of the things that I've been asking people is, what is it? Because in addition to real estate, we want to make it kind of entrepreneurial, right? We're all business owners. Real estate agents don't know it. They're self-employed. So is there anything specific that you guys are doing that is driving new business, or what is it that you're doing that's driving new business?
Well, one is we have a business development officer now. So
maybe I should ask her.
Yeah.
I mean, I think when Doug went to rehire me, one of the things that he told me was, this is the time to double down on marketing. And I really think that is our focus, is we really believe in good karma. So it's double downing. We have the time. Let's go to lunch. Let's go to dinner. Let's double down on education. And those relationships will pay off eventually. I already feel like they're starting to come in. And I think even our relationship, there might not be anything to send right now, but let's still talk back and forth. We're here right now. We have the time where we wouldn't have this time maybe during the pandemic.
And, to that extent, talking a little bit about trying to pay it forward, I'm doing lots of work helping people clean up problems at other title companies right now. A commercial wholesaler basically bought a piece of land recently, and his intent was to sell it to a car lot next door. And the deal is a little shaky right now because there's a private drive between the two properties, and neither of the two lots own the access easement. And so they wouldn't be able to physically join them together. And he sort of called up and he's like, what do I do? What can we do? And we spent a lot of time working with him. He initially thought it was a title claim. And I'm like, no, someone's got to buy that access agreement. It wasn't on your contract. So we're spending lots of time helping people in the hopes that, hey, we're putting money into the till so that it comes back later on.
It's a long game, right?
It's a very long game.
I mean, that's the reason for the podcast, and I asked the question in the very beginning, what are you doing? I mean, obviously, one of the things that I'm really trying to focus on is that while we have the time, kind of like what you said, get out there, be known.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
If you're not known, it doesn't matter how good you are.
That's right. And the other thing is, just showing, hey, I'm willing to help you irrespective if there's a deal or not for me.
Right.
I had a friend who owns a series of therapy offices, basically, and he's trying to get into a syndicated real estate deal where they put a bunch of doctors together, they build a medical building, do the finish out, and the medical doctors are a co-owner in the building.
Okay.
And, he sent me the documents for me to take a quick look at just to sort of see what was going on with it. And I took a look at them and I said, well, what's the percent ownership interest you're actually going to have at the end of it? He's like, well, it's right here. And I said, no, they're just talking about ownership interests, but they don't talk about what's your actual percentage ownership in the building. He's like, I thought it was that. I'm like, no, I need to see the operating agreement. And then he sent the operating agreement, and I took a look at the operating agreement, and the operating agreement is something very different, where the people who are putting the deal together, basically, they get an equivalent share to whatever the initial loan is on the permanent refinancing. It's still probably a good deal for him, but it's not what he thought it was, and I spent tons of time. We're not going to get the title transaction out of that, but I wanted to be able to help him understand what it was that he was walking into and make sure that he was a good deal for him.
Sure. No, that makes sense. I mean, One of the things that I've been asking as well is, what are the major pain points outside of the obvious stuff right now that you guys experience? And, that's an example of one, but is there anything specific to the market today that you're kind of experiencing more than you normally would be?
I mean, if we want to touch on, we like to call them horror stories in title. I think we have a ton of fraud has been coming up, I think, in these slower times. And I
Wow.
think we're just seeing it more and more on different, whether it's vacant land fraud or operating agreement fraud. I don't know if you want to share a story or two.
Yeah, we've seen some pretty.
Well, let me ask this. I
Yeah.
mean, I didn't expect that to be the answer, but
Yeah.
that's super interesting. And so, getting information out to potential buyers and things of that nature, to educate, because let's face it, nowadays people don't want to call a salesperson and ask questions. They kind of want to troll you and watch a video like we're putting together right
Mhm.
now. So when we talk about fraud, how do you, as a title company, protect buyers from kind of something that sounds really scary?
Right.
Right?
Right.
I mean, a lot of people ask on a regular basis, what does a title company actually do?
Yeah. Well, on these particular transactions, the real danger point right now is vacant land fraud. So the minute we get a vacant land contract come in, there's a red flag. The teams have to come bring it to me, and we start asking lots of questions. And it's not just the buyers. We've seen listing agents hoodwinked as well. A very, very experienced listing agent that has been in the business for 20 years got hired remotely from a seller she never met. He was out of state, only could communicate via email, all this sort of stuff, wanted to sell this vacant land. She hired a drone crew and paid all this upfront money to have a drone fly around the property and do all these great photos of it. And then when the contract came into us, we're like, oop, vacant land. We have to start running all of these checks to see if this guy is legit. He's really the owner. And one of the things that we have been doing, and we don't want to tell too much up
Yeah.
front about what we do to find out about these fraudulent transactions, because people will start figuring out how to evade them. But
Yeah, I was just thinking. I'm like, are we learning right now? how to
yeah,
commit fraud?
yeah. But one of the things that we do have the seller do is have them get notarized on an affidavit, and we use an remote online notary, and
Okay.
and they have a much more extensive identification system than just a mobile notary would be. A mobile notary goes out, looks at your driver's license or passport, says, yeah, that this seems like this person. The remote online notary asks credit questions, which as a lender, So
Sure.
they'll ask things like, did you own a Toyota Corolla or a Camry? Did you live
Right.
at this address or this address? And of course, when they started asking the question, the purported seller, boop, hung up and ghosted.
So just to walk through a fictitious scenario, but just to kind of, make it bite-sized for a potential buyer. Here I'm a buyer that has the dream that I'm going to buy vacant land. I'm going to own it for a few years. And eventually when I win the lottery or whatever have you, I'm going to build my dream home on it, because I hear a lot of this, right? There's
Right.
a lot of, I don't have the money, so I'll just buy the land now and figure it out later. So I sign onto a contract to purchase this land, and you guys are doing the investigation on whether or not the person that I think that I'm buying this land from is actually the owner, because worst case scenario is I wire funds and all of a sudden we actually don't own the land.
That's right.
And my
Correct.
money is in Bangladesh.
That's right.
Correct.
That's absolutely right.
And it
That's
is
terrifying.
and it is happening in Austin.
Yeah.
So to be clear, as a buyer, title actually serves a purpose.
Yeah, it does.
Absolutely.
It does.
You need title insurance.
Yes. I mean, it is one of the things that protects buyers, because, interestingly enough, the buyer is protected if they get a title insurance policy. The title company has to go make them whole.
Mhm.
You always hear about, sort of deed theft and, oh, the sellers are worried, am I going to lose my property? No. If it's fraudulent, you didn't convey it, so the property didn't convey. So the seller, the actual owner of the land, is protected. Obviously, they may have to spend some time cleaning up some stuff, but they're not going to ever lose their land.
Mhm.
However, on the buy side, they're at a risk of loss of money. The title company eventually will make them whole, but the claims process is not a fast process.
No?
So, no.
Well,
And so,
insurance companies typically don't like to pay.
well, they want to make sure they understand what's going on, and they
Right.
ask lots of questions and try and understand. And they want to know who's who didn't do what they were supposed to do. But one of the other things a buyer can do is simply at the start, before you send your option fee over, which that will be gone.
Right,
Your
yeah.
earnest money you might get back, but your option fee will be gone. Before you send an option fee, ask the listing agent, have you ever met with this person in face to face?
I was going to say that's number one. I mean, that's even the first thing I ask my seller's agents is, have you met the seller? And I think as a buyer, you can ask that. Have their agent ask them, have you met the seller? And then just go from there. We also get like a daily watch list of properties. So if you're a buyer and you're looking at a property, send it our way. We can kind of see if it's on one of those lists already.
That's great information. I'm going to start using that.
Yeah.
Honestly, I mean,
Yeah.
why not? How
Yeah.
easy is it to just ask
Send
your
it.
buyer's agent, hey, does the seller actually, or the seller's agent know the seller? Or
That's
met
right.
them?
Yeah. Yeah.
Start there.
And increasingly, there is a suspicion, at least I've seen on the national level with the American Land Title Association, that the suspicion is that there's actually active groups that are doing this systematically in a lot of the cities where it's sort of hot real estate markets and people feel this pressure to do it all fast, or I'm going to lose it. And so they think it's a lot of the same players that are playing the same game again and again.
I had a statistic, and honestly, I don't have a technician sitting over here, but we're going to work on that to where we could just pull up right now. I know it's millions. I mean, maybe potentially even billions of dollars that has been, ultimately stolen
Right.
from these scams.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty wild.
The second one is wire fraud, and we're seeing a ton of that. That's been an ongoing sort of theme for the last 3 years, probably. It's been terrible, and we've seen it on one of our transactions. A commercial buyer wired $700,000 off to someone who had hacked his email account, waited till it looked like it got near the end of the transaction and said, oh, here's the wiring instructions for the title company. He didn't call us, like we said, to verify. And
that money's just gone.
Yeah, well,
No, we fought.
we fought. We got the FBI on it, and they actually were able to
Retrieve it.
go
No way.
freeze the account.
Well, that's cool.
Because of timing.
Yeah.
I think on that one specific, a red flag to look for was that scammer changed the name on the account. So if anything changes on your wire instructions, that's a red flag. And then he ended up calling after he sent the wire, which was what triggered us to be able to contact the FBI in time.
Yeah.
So it was all on the same day and why we were able to catch it.
Yeah, because we caught it so soon that we were able to get the FBI on it. We also called the bank and said, hey, we looked up this routing number. It looks like it's going to you. This is a fraudulent transaction. You need to freeze the account. And they're like, well, we don't know you. You're a third party, blah, 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 blah. They were very nervous about it. But one of the things they did is when they saw that the incoming name for the wire didn't exactly match the account name, they used that as an excuse to kick the wire back and reject it.
Wow.
So, I mean, this was a commercial buyer who theoretically was pretty sophisticated. But when you looked at the email address, they photocopied basically our escrow officer's signature line and just cut and paste that.
Yeah.
But when you looked at the email address, it said titleagent66@gmail.com.
Right.
So,
But if you don't
Covered over
open,
that.
and if you don't
Yeah.
open your email up all the way, you don't see that, right? You
Right.
just see the name of the person. And so that's, I think when you're moving so fast, you're not going to look at that email address.
yeah. So a lot of buyers have gotten nervous and are bringing cashier's checks the day before. And boy, that's the number one thing we wish lenders and agents would say. We need it the day before.
Yeah.
They don't understand the difference between what are good funds, i.e. this check is good, and available funds, which is the check is actually cashed and the Fed has shipped the money over to our account. So just because you give us a cashier's check, which are good funds, they're not available yet until we've had 24 hours for the Fed to actually send the funds. And if we don't have the funds, then we can't fund and we can't send them to anyone. And you'll hear all the time, my title company always lets me bring a cashier's check. You always hear that the same day. You hear that sort of thing. There are ways around it, like, okay, well, we can hold the payoff wire if there's enough payoff funds. There's things we can finagle to sometimes make it work, but it's not a guarantee. So we always tell people, please, please, please bring it ahead of time.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're skipping forward to one of my segments, but we can just roll with it. What is it that you wish you could tell your clients that, you run into? That obviously is one of them. Is there anything else that you wish that your potential clients knew that they just don't seem to know when when doing transactions with you?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I think just bluntly, it's you need title insurance. And I think one thing that I always tell my clients is if you think you're going to have messy title, or you are take on a new listing and they tell you my grandma owned the house but she gave it to me, that's a red flag. Have us open it as a listing, and we can kind of just see what's under the hood and start at least telling you, hey, this will be able to close in 30 days, or no, we're going to need probably months of affidavit of heirship work on it.
Well, that's a good point, because I get questions all the time. Do I need owner's title insurance? And what is this is a two-part question. What's the difference between lender's title insurance and owner's title insurance? And which one do I need? And which one's better?
Yeah.
And
You need both.
If you have a
So
lender.
You definitely
Right.
need both if you have a lender. So the owner's policy is going to protect the new buyer, and the lender's policy is going to protect the lender, right? I like to explain it in simple terms of most insurance protects you from something happening in the future, whereas title insurance protects you from something that's happened in the past, right? It's something that's usually unforeseeable, obviously, because we're going to do what we can to clear it, but you have it in the case that there's something that was missed, there was fraud, there was something that was, again, unforeseeable, and it's one of those things that you are going to wish you had it once you need it.
mm-hmm.
I think some of the others, there's just timely response to communication requests from the teams. We've seen so many situations where, we send out a seller information form. Please
Yeah.
fill out this seller information form. It helps us prepare in advance. And the seller didn't fill it out. We, badger. They come the day of closing and they say, oh, well, I did buy it individually, but then I got married and then I got divorced, but I'm single again. And it's like, well, what did the divorce decree say?
Right.
Who got the house? Who's allowed? And we had to stop everything. So part of it is just, hey, it's overwhelming as a buyer and a seller at times. We get it. But that information is what helps us prep to make sure that the closing goes smoothly at the end of the
Sure.
process.
And I think
Garbage in,
that's a-
garbage out, right?
Yeah, and I think that's a good tip to agents, right? I think a lot of times when we go into escrow, agents kind of go silent, and that's actually when we need you most.
Yeah, they
right?
think their job is done.
Yeah, they're like,
I sold
title's got it, and we got it, but we'll need your help sometimes on like pushing your clients and how important it is to get that seller sheet or that buyer sheet. You would be surprised how many times at the closing table, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I am married." It's
Right.
like, okay,
No, I
hold
deal
on.
with it all the time.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah.
Well,
So-
and maybe it's just coaching agents. Agents, if you're out there,
Mhm.
just give a good handoff, right? Because, that's one of the things that I experience as well, is that title is asking me questions, and I'm thinking, why isn't title asking these questions to the buyer? And they're like, we did. The buyer's just not responding.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, I don't know. I have to kind of devise a plan, maybe even having like title CC the agent on it and say, hey, listen, we need the answers to these questions.
And I think that's our push. I mean,
Yeah.
we definitely try to do as much communication between buyer and seller first, unless the agent tells us otherwise. But if we are at the point of asking the agent directly or the lender directly, it's because we're not getting an answer from the buyer or seller.
And then we always have to put in that scary sentence. I think our closing is going to be delayed because we don't have this information. And then all of a sudden,
Right.
people sort of spring into action, So,
Well, as long as we're talking about agents, I always like to ask, I know the ideal client is anyone that's going to refer business, but as far as like a real estate agent is concerned, you mentioned a lot of commercial, in your conversation. If you could kind of make an avatar of the ideal, client regarding like a referral partner, what's that look like?
well, I'll talk to the commercial side and maybe you
Okay.
can talk to the residential side. So on the commercial side, it ends up typically being principals that throw the transaction your way. On the residential side, it's much more agents. But on the commercial side, it's usually the building owner themselves will have a connection either with a title company or with a real estate attorney that has a connection with a title company. So that's where a lot of our business comes that way. Some of it has been through residential transactions where we met people who own commercial buildings, and then we got it that way as well. And
But is there any type of, type of building type or type of transaction
Sure.
that you personally are like, hey, this is what I
Oh,
really
yes.
like to
Yeah.
do. I'll do this,
Yeah.
but I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, we've probably done over 100 multifamily transactions,
Okay.
mostly in the central Austin area. It's kind of funny. I live right off of 35th Street, but if
Mhm.
you drive down 38.5 Street, it's like all of these kind of C-class apartment
Right.
complexes.
Yep.
We've probably done 2/3
Okay.
of the sales transactions on those buildings. So a lot of the smaller building owners will use us. We have one family that we've worked with that probably owns 15 apartment complexes, and we've done acquisitions and refinances for them. We really have that in a groove
Figured out, right?
about like here's the things that you need to do to make sure the transaction goes smoothly, and we
Gotcha.
can ask a lot of those questions up front. It's like, okay, well, we need the leases so we can figure out the rent prorations. We need the security deposits. We need to find out, do you have a separate, TICAM or triple net account? Is
Mhm.
that transferring over? Are the security deposits transferring over? We know all of the elements that are going to make it smooth, and we start asking those questions up front.
That makes sense. And what about the residential side?
Yeah, I think for me, I put it in two buckets, right? I think something unique about Midtown is that we have Ed Ishmael, our attorney, and he's also, his side hustle is a builder, and he specializes in the condo regime formation and filing. So I would say my two buckets are the developer and builder aspect that are building those condo regimes or single families, mostly on the east side or south. And then my other bucket is just going to be your agent, right? Of course, I will take anybody that wants to work with us.
Yeah.
I do feel like I'm a matchmaker though, right? I am constantly meeting people and trying to match them with personalities of my escrow team. And my escrow team includes Doug as well too, right? So if I think there's a person, I'm like, oh my God, Doug, we have to take so-and-so to lunch. I think you'll love them and they'll be able to call you with questions. Or does it make more sense to be on Team Terry or Team Michelle? Michelle's a little bit more robust in the condo regime. She's very blunt, she's very quick, and the builders love that, right? They love that they send their entity docs one time and never have to send them again. As if they go to another title company, they're constantly asking them for documentation where we keep them all on file. And then, Terry's a little bit more nurturing and motherly and can take on more of like the first time home buyers. So again, when I'm meeting potential clients, I'm thinking in my head, who can I match them with?
Okay. Well, I'm going to give you an answer
Okay.
if I was asked that question.
Yeah.
And then I want you to answer it back.
Love it.
Because I don't think those are great answers.
Mm-hmm.
But hear me out.
I want to hear the avatar.
So my ideal client, again, I want to work with any buyer that I possibly can. But if I really got to choose, I seem to work the best with millennial first-time home buyers. They ask a lot of questions, right? And I love that because I can sometimes tend to over-explain. And I feel like first-time home buyers really appreciate that, opposed to, maybe someone who's a little older, they're on their second or third home, and sometimes they go, listen, buddy, I've bought homes before. I know exactly what I'm doing. And then, of course, 3 to 5 days later, something comes up, and they're like, I've never heard of that before. So it's nice. I enjoy first-time home buyers. That works really, really well for me because of the reasoning I just gave. And then in addition to that, for whatever reason, I seem to do really, really well with females more than males.
Mm-hmm.
I think, again, it might have something to do with the explanation stuff. Men don't want to be like,
Explain to.
Where just traditionally I feel like women have a tendency to ask great questions. They want, they want to take the time. They want to know what's going on. And so that for me seems to be my ideal client. Again, I work with all types, but that seems to be the one that is the smoothest transaction, that seems to go the best, and everybody's really happy in the end. So when you're talking about real estate agents that you want to work with, is there a type of agent in particular? Is this agent a 65-year-old woman? Is it a 22-year-old crypto bro? I don't know.
So, bro. Mine, I would say probably for me, obviously around my age.
Okay.
Right? Hungry. I move fast. I like answering emails. My phone is on 24/7. So I like an agent that's on the same pace. I don't mind answering your email at 10 p.m. if we're going to get a deal done. And I think, male or female, I don't care.
Sure.
Yeah, someone who's hungry, who's going to be at the same pace. I think
Do they have to
obviously
be organized? Can they count? Can they lean
they
on
can
you?
lean
What does
on
that look
us
like?
to be organized. They can lean on. A lot of my high producing agents are the ones that respond in like 2 words, 3 words, like not even a full sentence. I don't mind it. I will complete your sentence for you. I do like an agent to be a little bit involved if they're on the buyers or if they're representing a buyer, right? Getting us those answers. If I can lean on them to get me an answer, because I'm not going to bug you unless I need an answer.
Gotcha.
So that obviously is would be a pinpoint.
And
for
then
me.
in the commercial space, think of your favorite client and describe him or her right now.
Well,
Doug and I are a good balance, right?
yeah,
That's what
I mean,
There's no wrong answer to this one.
well, like we work with a couple multifamily brokers
Yep.
that send us repeat business. One is super professional, but a little bit more hands off.
Mhm.
Like, hey, here's the deal. These are the players. Here's what's going on. They set you up, and then you run with it. The other one calls us about 5 times a day when his transaction is going through, which makes sense. For commercial brokers, a residential person may close 10, 12, 15 deals a year, and much more than that. These commercial brokers may close 4. So if something goes wrong on one of their deals, like
There's a lot of money on the table.
25% of their revenue just walked out the door.
Right.
So it makes sense. And it really, you have to flex your communication style. So just as you were saying, you try and figure out if they're a first-time home buyer and what their comfort level is. I think a lot of it is just asking those questions up front.
Gotcha.
I know when we're doing a closing, I ask people up front, is this your first time to buy a house? And if they say yes, I'm like, great. I can go max explanation, or we can
Yes.
sign and go, you tell me how you would like me to lead. I'm here at your disposal. And then you'll hear people sort of say, I'd like the more detailed explanation. And you're like, great. And you walk them through it much more slowly and thoroughly than you would for somebody else who's like, I got it. I want to sign and go. Our joke is in the residential side that when attorneys come in to buy a house, they literally sign, walk out the door.
Right.
And when the engineers come in to buy a house,
They read every word.
they read every single word. And then they want to negotiate over Bank of America's deed of trust.
Mhm.
And I'm like, and I just tell them yeah, Bank of America is not going to negotiate over the wording in your deed of trust. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, no, I get that. One of the questions I had just to title companies in general, and I've been seeing a little bit of a shift to this, but I kind of wanted to get your take on it. Are you seeing more mobile closings, or do the majority of your closings occur in your actual title company?
It's really interesting because I'm from California and I did
Mhm.
escrow in California, and almost everybody does a mobile notary in California. I was shocked when I came to Austin on how many people come to their office. I think from me starting with Midtown in 2018, it's definitely increased mobile notary, especially after COVID. But a good amount, especially your new home buyers, are coming into the office.
Mm-hmm. I
And
think that's
our
true.
our regular seller clients are mostly coming to the office. We do have a couple that are local that are just don't want to come to the office, and we'll do mobile notary with them. But definitely an increase, but not, I wouldn't say more than half.
Mm-hmm. I think that's right.
Yeah, I mean, same thing. Ohio is like
Really?
80% mobile
Yeah.
notary. And the reason I think it's a Texas thing is because if you're doing a cash out refinance, it cannot be done mobile.
Right.
So it's almost like, if
People are programmed to think that way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Because a lot of times we'll have buyers that, oh my gosh, I'm going to be on vacation. I can't close on this day.
Mhm.
And in this environment with interest rates and everything along those lines, like I have a deal right now where the sellers and the buyers are just very casual. Everything's, cool. And the buyers are going out of town. And it's like, guys, we have to extend the interest rate because, we need an extra couple of days. And it's a very large loan amount. And it's costing $900. And of course, I'm supposed to pay for that.
Uh-huh.
And it's like, so it's where are you going to be? And of
Mhm.
course, vacation is like Florida.
Right.
It's like, guys, can you take an hour out of your day to,
Mhm.
do this with a mobile notary? And
Mhm.
of course, that's what we're going to end up doing. But yeah, I'm seeing more mobile in general. But then I just think that, at least in Texas, I don't know that a lot of buyers know that's an option.
I think that is certainly the plus side is the convenience. Like,
Mhm.
they come to me, I don't have to drive anywhere, I don't have to take any time out of my
Right.
day. Our concern always, though, is about the closing experience.
Yeah.
So, we hire a national notary firm, but we don't control the caliber of the mobile
Mhm.
notary that's showing up at there. And we've seen some not so great things happen.
That's why I always go to them.
Yeah.
I'm there
Yeah.
for them.
Yeah.
And I have to just shout out Matt because I love and appreciate when a lender comes to closing, and Matt comes to every closing.
Yep.
And I think in Austin we're unique where it's a lot of new home buyers coming in, and I think for a new home buyer that's part of the experience. That's the best day. You get to like sign on your home in person, take a picture with the key, and I really like doing the signings of that. And I think it's just a really warm moment. Which is going to be a little bit different like in California where it's much more transactional and it's not going to be as many first-time home buyers.
Yeah. The other issue is the flexibility of being able to rapidly make changes if there's something that's wrong. Like something that we typically see, the contract has Bob Smith and the loan application has Robert J. Smith III, and you'll suddenly see that we have two different names happening on the title documents and the lender documents, and the guy gets all upset. I never use Robert E. Smith III. I'm only Bob Smith, and doesn't want to be that way in title, and you're having to go through all these hoops. Well, if they're in the office, we can call the lender, we can get it approved, we can regenerate documents, we can flex and run with it. That mobile notary, it's like, want, too bad.
No, I've had that happen, and even we've been doing a lot of hybrid closings, and we're working on becoming like fully digital.
Yep.
I mean, there'll still be a notary there, but for the lender docs, and there have definitely been times where either somebody didn't sign, or I'm always there to remind them.
Initial there.
Yeah, and we've been able to change stuff, especially on the digital side, right away when I'm there, and I have a delegated closer and all that kind of stuff. So I find that if I don't go, because I can't go to them if I'm out of town, and
Right.
I'm not always in town, but I probably make at least 85 to 90% of my closings, and when I don't, that's when there's a problem.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, inevitably.
right.
The hybrid closings I'm a big fan of because it suddenly the document package shrinks from this down to this, and I think it makes a less sort of, grueling experience
Sure.
for a buyer to purchase. So I love the fact that more and more of that is happening.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, a lot of the things that are being signed are documents that they've already signed 100 times anyway.
Exactly.
And it's, I've most of them are between 80 to 108 pages that they're digitally signing. So yeah, when you're printing out, and I think that's a little daunting when you come in too. You're like, all right, today's the day, and there's like a phone book there.
Yes.
And now we've kind of gotten it down to a magazine,
Yeah.
right?
That's exactly what it is.
So, well, did you guys, I mean, now that you're warmed up and you're comfortable, did you guys have any questions for me? Anything that I can answer as a lender? I'd be happy to do that. And then, if not, one of the things I did want to make mention of is that you've kind of talked about your buyers in terms of, giving them information that you wish they knew. But I also would like for you to do the same for real estate agents as well as lenders, right? But is there anything I can answer?
I mean, a question I think interest rates, right, are like the hottest topic. Everyone,
Sure.
I'm like tired of talking about them. But in your opinion, what would you tell a buyer in today's market in regards to the interest rates?
Yeah, this has been a common one. So first of all, I want to give the disclaimer that my crystal ball is broken. Okay.
Love it.
It used to work from time to time, but it's just it's busted. The one thing that I've been saying, and this is honestly the exact answer I've been giving, is that if you are a homeowner currently, that is a debatable topic that we can touch on later, whatever, because there are a lot of debatable points on whether or not selling right now, buying another home, and all of those things are just a no-brainer. But what is a no-brainer is if you do not own a home, unless you live with your parents rent-free or some sort of friend or family member, there really is no reason not to buy, especially in this market, for a number of reasons. But the main reason being, and this has been the line we've been using, is anyone who's holding off is holding off because they think they're going to get a deal. But the deal in this market is just getting a home.
That's right.
Absolutely.
I can't tell you how many buyers we get them approved. And it's funny watching kind of I don't know what you would call it, like the attitude or like the swagger, right? And my favorite one is, someone who's got an 800 credit score, they've got 20% down, they have a salaried position, they're making $250,000 plus, and they want to get into that, like they're a first-time home buyer, and they want to get into like that $400,000 to $600,000 market. Well, for starters, that is the most competitive market. We are seeing multiple offers on that.
Still.
still.
Yes.
Right. And so I watched them go from this confidence, like if I want it, I get it, all the way to, well, now I'm just going to wait, because they just become so defeated, I guess. And the point of that is that it doesn't matter where interest rates are, because interest rates, none of us have, I don't have control over them. You know, no one has control over them. And then even analysts, you know, we pay for websites and analysts to like digest this information and regurgitate it, and even they can't get it right. So when I can say with full-blown confidence that no one knows and no one is going to have any control over the interest rates, what I do know is that while I watch people make offers in multiple offer situations, the thing that no one is talking about is that people are making offers, they're making them over asking, and I hear this comment on a regular basis from first-time home buyers or people who don't currently own homes. They say, who the hell has this money to go this much over asking and have this much of an appraisal gap waiver? Well, I'll tell you, the people who are winning these offers are the people who have equity that they've accumulated from a property that they've already purchased. And to them, it doesn't matter. Like, these two values that I'm going to give you are identical, but one just emotionally holds a different weight. $100,000 worth of equity that you kind of just made by owning a home, or $100,000 that you've saved up in a money market account or savings account. When you go toe-to-toe with someone who has what I call monopoly money and somebody who's got hard-earned liquid cash, this person wins every time because they're throwing it around like they just hit the slot machine an hour ago,
Right.
where you just showed up and took that money out of the ATM.
Absolutely.
And they're going to beat you every time. And so what's the moral of the story? You've got to get in the game,
Right.
right? And so when people are like, well, you know, it's expensive, it's this, it's that. I mean, look at what you're paying now to rent. Don't get me wrong. Well, Matt, I live at home with my mom, and I'm going to wait out the market. You got me.
Yeah.
You got me.
Yeah.
You know, there's nothing lower than free, right?
Yeah,
And God bless your parents.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you don't own a home, I don't care what the interest rates are, because if they go up, you'll be happy you bought, and if they go down, you're just going to
Absolutely.
refinance. I mean, that's, you know, and I always say, like, don't listen to me. I'm the mortgage guy. That's what I would say. Call your financial advisor. I mean, we partner with financial advisors on a regular basis that will say exactly what I just told you.
Yeah.
Don't listen to me.
Well, I think the statistics are supporting what you're saying exactly. If you look, even though we've had a market slowdown in terms of number of transactions, you're seeing prices still have gone up 2%, 3% over last year. If you look at the Great Recession back in 2008, 2009 in Central Austin, and it was, you know, admittedly one of the worst recessions pretty much since the Great Depression.
Yeah.
Prices in Central Austin only went down 5%.
Right.
So, I mean, and that was a full-blown disaster. So the people that are sort of, I'm going to wait for, you know, a correction of that kind, you're going to be waiting a long time.
Yeah.
So, you know, I tell people, try and get in at a place where you can get some kind of equity for future appreciation. And then, you know, later on, if circumstances change, you have that equity, you can go buy your second house and move up and all that sort of stuff.
And you can play around with that monopoly money.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I don't foresee things getting cheaper in Austin.
No, well, and again, it's an inventory issue.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's really all about inventory. Just today, I was reading an article, you know, from a national news network, and I'm reading them because I just want to see what they're saying versus kind of what we're seeing. And of course, the headline reads that home sales are dropping.
Right.
Right? Like, people aren't buying. But in reality, home sales are dropping because we don't have inventory.
That's right.
Yes.
There's not homes to buy.
Mm-hmm.
There's a ton of buyers.
Yeah.
Believe me, I've got a pipeline full of them that would love to buy a home right now,
Right.
and they're trying to buy a home right now. They just can't, and that is, you know, the one thing that we just don't. That the general public just doesn't seem to be able to really want to come to terms with. And so, you know, this brings me to another thing we've been talking a lot about, which is builders, right? And it's like, well, I'm going to go buy a brand new home, and that's going to be a lot easier. And I know you guys aren't the realtor segment, but boy, the experiences with builders has been not exciting.
Right.
You know, we've got all of those horror stories, and that's not to say anything terrible about you builders, but you know, everyone thinks, oh, I'm going to buy a brand new home and I'm not going to have any issues with it and it's going to be smooth sailing. And
Well, that's where we try and encourage people. If you are going to be purchasing a new home, have an agent that represents you. Make sure you get a home inspection to make sure that everything's been done the way it's supposed to.
absolutely.
It really makes sense to protect yourself on it. You know, the tide has turned in regards to that. We know in the go-go period of the pandemic, builders were basically canceling contracts with buyers because they could turn around and sell the house for $50,000, $100,000, $150,000 more. Those days are gone. Like now you're pretty secure. If you're a buyer and you go under contract on a new house, you're going to close on that house.
Right.
So that part of the experience is probably better for people.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, no, I agree. And so I don't know if that completely answers your interest rate question, but yeah, I mean, you know, we can talk a little bit about if you currently own a home, that's a tougher scenario because, you know, here you've got this super low interest rate and your buying power isn't going to go as far when even if you do have the equity, you're basically going to swap out that equity, put it down, and you're probably going to see an increase in your payment. So I look at it like if you're not moving because you just absolutely love the place, the new place that you're going to move to, then yeah, maybe now is not the time. You know, you're not trying to just be a move up buyer unless you absolutely, you know, maybe there's an increase in the family, you know, children. Maybe there's a home that comes on the market that you just have been looking at for years and it's finally available. Those are situations that are one-offs, but if you're being strategic about it, I don't think, you know, buying a new home if you already own one is best practices. But hey, people want what they want. I mean, you can make it to work in a Honda Accord.
yeah.
But I see a lot of really nice cars out there.
Well,
So,
we are seeing, you know, a lot of builders getting squeezed right now. They typically have hard money loans that are flexing and changing. The interest rates are starting to cause a lot of them to do haircuts on what they're originally hoping to get. We are seeing some more foreclosures on builders that got stuck basically with the high interest rate and not the ability to flip it as fast as they wanted to.
right.
So we are seeing some of that happening right now. And, you know, this is why I keep trying to encourage people, don't be waiting forever for something magical to happen because, you know, we're seeing builders dropping prices. And the smart developers are saying, hey, during the pandemic, I was making a 30% margin and I was just super happy about it. And now when we talk to some of our developer clients, they're like, hey, I'm back to 10%.
Right.
And that's what I was making in 2018, 2019. And that's the new reality. And they're the smart ones. They're like, I'm just going to make 10%. I'm going to flip the house. I'm going to move on to my next deal. And the developers that sit there and hold it, waiting for that magic 30% margin is going to happen, are the ones that are getting crushed. So.
I mean, and if you don't have an answer to this, I mean, it's okay. This is a kind of one-off question, but kind of flipping that to the investor side, right? You have investors that have bought these homes and they get tenants in, and then the county comes in and increases their taxes, right? And then now they have to increase rents and all this other stuff. And kind of to your point, you know, you've mentioned 30% profit margins as if it was a builder. Are you seeing investors that are in positions right now to where they're charging rents to keep tenants in the home and they're not even making money any longer because they kind of almost want to weather the storm? Or are they talking about selling? Like, what does that look like?
Well, I've talked to some smart investors who are starting to say, I don't know with these property taxes if this makes sense as a long-term hold anymore. I bought a duplex that's not too far from here. And when I bought it, the property taxes were about $4,000 on the duplex. And this year they're $9,000. So it's really big difference.
Interesting. Our center camera just went off. Did you hear that?
Yeah.
The red light's on this one still?
Yeah.
I don't know what happened.
It probably ran out of battery.
No, I've got it on a dummy plug, so it's like, I don't know what happened. We'll keep rolling.
Okay.
Sorry, that kind of derailed me.
No, that's all
We'll
right.
cut that out.
Yeah. That's fine. That's fine.
Yeah. So yeah, they're thinking about selling. Do you think that's going to free up any inventory? Is kind of where I was going with that.
I don't know.
I would say no. I do. Maybe I can touch on this briefly because we're talking about builders and inventory. So ironically, this morning there is a council meeting on what they're calling item 126, and it would allow builders to build 3 units instead of 2 on single family lots.
Okay.
And then subdividing minimal lot size would go down to 2,500. So we're a part of Austin Infill Coalition, and they're all over it on trying to push this. There's rumors that there'll probably be a lot of opposition, but it's something, I think it's out there, and it's just starting to talk about it. It's just being able to build 3 units would give us some more inventory.
Okay.
Probably more at an affordable price.
That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I heard about the what are your thoughts and what do you know about the whole Austin affordable home thing? I mean, there's a property that just is coming up on South Lamar that I've talked to a few agents that have toured, and
Is it single family?
so they're condos,
Mm-hmm.
and so there's a condominium next door that's like identical to it as far as the build is concerned. Current rent in that is $2,700, and then next door in the affordable housing, if you meet the requirements, your rent can be as low as $500.
Whoa.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, thoughts on that? Anything that you guys know about that?
Well, that's more typical in other cities. Like for a long time, Boston would have this program where they gave you a lot more entitlements if you added some affordable housing component in that development that you're doing, whether it's a high rise or, single family homes or townhomes. And it's really kind of a better solution. It's not trying to sort of segregate affordable housing off somewhere else.
Right.
They're
And part of the community.
They're part of the community. So, and it actually helps build sort of awareness of the issues. Like, oh my God, this is my neighbor. She's a single mom. She's got 4 kids. Husband's left. She's really struggling. It's not the other. It's my neighbor that I know that I like.
Right.
Austin has started doing that. They've started quite a few programs for builders. If you build and add a certain number of affordable housing units, they give you entitlements like fewer parking requirements, more height entitlements, and how high you can build. And I think that's the real solution, is like integrating it into whatever development you do. That's how it's going to happen, because anytime you just try and put, 1 or 2 little affordable houses in a neighborhood, everyone raises a big stink about it. But if
Right.
it's part of a bigger development, then I think you'll see more.
Gotcha.
My concern is that, Austin has this sort of program of, trying to build more affordable housing, but at the same time, we're losing affordable housing on the other end. Like what I could charge when I bought my duplex in 2017, I no longer can do because the property taxes are so large.
Right.
I'm literally, one of the units just covers property taxes and insurance. And so I wish there were a way that they thought about tax breaks for affordable housing, especially on property taxes, to allow it to stay in a more reasonable zone for people. And I don't know. It's just this weird cycle of just building on itself. I don't know if we'll ever be able to, build our way out of it.
Same. I think it's a balance. I think the little that I do know, some of the builders that are doing some of these affordable housing, they are saying it's so tough to do. It's so tough to get through the city, and it's so tough to get someone that actually qualifies for it. It's like a lot of hoops to jump through. So it's just, I don't know too many details, but just interesting on like, why are we making it so hard too? And
Right.
it has to have incentive for the builder too, right? The builder has to want to do it or have that minimum percentage of affordable housing units inside.
I gotcha. Well, outside of your rate questions, did you have anything else for me?
I mean, personally, selfishly, what do you need in a title company? Like, what are you looking for in a partnership with a title company?
That's
as
a great
lender?
question. For me, to be quite honest, the number one thing is I really like it when title companies are involved in the transaction. And what I mean by that is that I definitely know, and it's funny because I see real estate agents, for example, that really want to use title companies because kind of what we just talked about, they want to sign that transaction up and then they just kind of want to go, all right, I'm done with it. And I run into the same issue with title companies where they're not reaching out. They're giving the like client form, but they're not like picking up the phone. They're not being proactive to let the client know, hey, like we're a part of this transaction too. Because the reality is buyers, if I were to, give a broad stroke, They basically don't know what you do.
Mhm.
They think that it's a waste of money, and the only thing that they think that you're basically doing is having them come, and they think you're notaries.
Right.
That's really what they think.
Right.
They think you are a notary that just basically is there at the finish line and goes, okay, it's all official. Like, here's the big key, right? So when title companies get very involved with the buyers and say, hey, listen, we're a part of this, like, we need to communicate. And of course, I think it's great that we talked about the fact that real estate agents maybe need to do a better job of handing off, that transaction, because some of the gripes that we just covered, as far as nothing is more frustrating than getting to close. I mean, I've had, here's just a quick story. I've had situations where we've got, guys buying a house, mom's co-signing on the property, and we're at closing. I'm there at the closing, and we have a buyer, and we're like, where's your mom? And everyone's like, he doesn't know she needs to be at closing. And I'm thinking, like, how in the world, first of all, I mean, shame on me, I guess, but how in the world do you think you're going to buy a house and not have to sign something?
Right.
So shame on me. But the title is kind of who schedules the closing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right? And and you're saying absolutely. And that blows my mind, because I'm here to tell you there are some big title companies here in Austin that do not schedule closings. They reach out to us and they ask us, when does the buyer want to come in to do their closing? And it's on the lender to schedule the closing. Now, for the record, again, I've been here for 4 years, but that was a big learning curve for me.
Yeah.
Because that is not a thing where I come from.
Yeah.
And so there were definitely times when they're reaching out and saying, when does the buyer want to close? I'm like, I have no idea. Call them. Like, why don't you ask them?
Yeah.
Right? So that when you're like, oh, of course, like, no, not of course. Like, I'm talking big names.
Well,
that I won't say, but like, yeah.
The problem is, that's the standard operating system for us, is to try and reach out and schedule and all that. Now, that being said, we had a real estate agent chew us out last week because she's like, I'm really busy all morning. You should have reached out to me first and gotten my schedule and then offered what was left to the buyer. And so, sometimes we're trying to be proactive and make everything happen, and we're like, oops,
And the team brought that to me, and I said, that's a one-off.
Yeah.
And we don't communicate with your buyer and seller without the agent copied on it.
Yeah.
And I think, to me, that agent could have responded, I'd like to be at closing. Can we do this time instead?
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah. I think the only time we reach out to the lender for closing, if it's like a cash out or refi.
Yeah, well,
and
of
then,
course. Yeah.
but buyer and seller, no, we're on it. Like, we want to make that experience pleasant.
And we always try and close early in the day.
Correct. Before 2 p.m.
Yeah, I mean, communication is what you're telling me.
Yeah.
We just
Yeah,
need to communicate better.
for sure. Pick up the phone.
Mhm.
I'm like, Doug and I are so big on that. Like, even with our own team, we're like, oh, if someone didn't answer, if you don't get an answer by end of day, pick up the phone.
Yeah.
Well, that's one of the things when I talk to buyers, and it's one of the videos that I just recently did, was if your title company, your real estate agent, your lender, even your insurance agent, your home inspector, like, if they're all good at what they do, you're going to have a good experience. But if they're all really good at what they do and they've all worked together before, like, that's when I watch buyers just have an unbelievable experience.
Right.
And it astonishes me when, and let's face it, I mean, I'm just going to throw some shade here. Like, it starts with the real estate agent. It really does. Like, no one's calling you and saying, hey, I'm thinking about buying a home. Can you tell me about title?
Yeah.
And I'm like the boogeyman. Nobody wants to call me first, right? Like, you only call me when you find the home, right?
Right. And then it's a scramble.
Right. Which is not what you're supposed to do. And, real estate agents handle the fun part. It's sexy, looking at homes is fun. It's exciting. I want to talk about the kitchens and the bathroom.
Unless it's August or July in
Right.
Austin.
but what I'm getting at is, it's like, I'm kind of shocked at the amount of agents, and I see this, where they have a buyer, and that buyer is going to go and, like, work with Quicken Loans or you know an online lender, for
Yes.
example. And
Rocket Mortgage.
Exactly, and I forget they had to change their name.
Yeah.
And you know, and then it's like, well, what title company are we going to use? And then the listing agent's like, I'll use this one because you know I've never had a great experience, but hey, you know, I close 2 transactions a year,
Right.
and now you've got like 5 people that maybe they are all good companies, right?
Right.
But it's always just a little like figuring it out.
Mm-hmm.
And I really my public service announcements to real estate agents is number one, whether you know it or not, you're on the front lines in terms of the transaction. So like if things aren't going the way that you want it, look inward. Right? Because if you weren't going out of your way to say, hey, like here's the lender that you should probably use, you know, if you want to have a good experience, here's the title company that's going to give us, you know, the best service. Here's the insurance agent, because you can't blame a buyer. Right? How many times are they going to get homeowners insurance? How many times are they going to use a lender, a title company, and all of that?
Yep.
So they have no reference of experience, and that's the one thing I see that the transactions that don't go smooth is when nobody knows anybody.
Right.
Yep.
Well, I mean, you can lead a horse to water. So I have seen buyers who are like, oh yeah, this guy, I filled out a form online and, 36 lenders, approached me and I picked some guy in Georgia. And I've told this, a really good friend of mine, I'm like, you are going to have a bad experience.
Right.
He's like, what? I'm like, you are going to have a bad experience. If the person's not local, if they're not working in Texas all the time, if they don't know what they're doing here, you're going to have a bad experience. And he had a horrible, horrible experience.
I had a similar one at the closing table, and he had questions about loan documents. And I said, let's call your lender. And we literally could not get a hold of anybody because it was like a 1-800 number is all we had. And they would give us a different person with the company every time we called. So, yeah.
Well, that's the one thing that I always think about, and this is something that I don't think real estate agents think about because it doesn't pertain to them. Like, you as a real estate agent can't show homes outside of your local community, right? Like, you're not going to be a real estate agent in Texas and go show a home in California.
Right.
It's just not feasible. But as a lender or even as a title company, we can kind of work remotely from another marketplace. And that's the thing that I always tell people. It's imperative that you work with a local lender because I'm way more. I'm held way more accountable.
Yeah.
Right. Like I have a reputation on the line. Like I am physically here. Whereas it's very easy for somebody in Nebraska to just they could just change their number.
Right.
Right. And their reputation, it doesn't matter. Like they don't operate in this space, and there's just a much lower accountability for that, and that is a risk when you are purchasing what is probably going to be the most, the largest purchase of your life at that time.
Well, and you also have to think it's not just the transaction, but it's down the line as well. So we work, our attorney does all these condo regimes. So we do all these condo sales where a old lot and block legal address gets changed to condo association, unit A and unit B. Well, inevitably that first year the taxes get messed up because they'll send the tax bill to the old person. Right. They won't provide it to the two new owners. There's all these problems. And like sometimes the lender will pay the entire amount out of the escrow for both units. Sometimes they won't pay either because they we got a bill, but it's for a lot and block and we have a condo association, so that must not be for us. They don't pay anything. And if you don't have a local lender that can pick up the phone and help resolve things with your escrow account, I felt so bad. This guy had a nightmare problem. I don't know. Am I going to get in trouble? It's a big national bank. Let's just say it's a big national bank, and he could not get anyone to resolve his escrow problems, like none. And I looked at they did crazy things. Like they would send him a check for $14,000, and then the next month said, "Hey, your escrow account is empty. Your new payment's going to be $9,000 a month." I mean, it was insane. And he couldn't get anyone to help him. So I just say, please find a local lender, someone that you can pick up the phone and call to that'll help you through the transaction, but more importantly, will help you after the transaction if something goes wrong.
It's after. And I think at the closing table with a condo regime, I always ask them, do you know your lender? Who's your lender? And if you don't, call us during tax season so we can help you find your bill.
Yeah.
Well, I would say that's my biggest pain point right now is the fact that in any business, right, there's 3 things that people look for. They want to know how quickly are you going to be able to perform,
Mhm.
right? How much is it going to cost me? And what is my experience going to be like?
Mhm.
Outside of that, I mean, it doesn't matter if you're, getting a roof put on, working with a title company, working with a lender. And so because interest rates have been so high, the the service has just it's like it's irrelevant.
Yeah.
And I can't get over the amount of people that are willing to, I don't know if it's sacrifice or just kind of ignore, right? Because first and foremost, let's face it, you talk to 3 or 4 lenders and let's say one of them is, out of state. No one says anything bad about themselves,
Mhm.
right? So of course they're going to say, "Hey, here's what we're going to do for you. We're going to provide all of this and that." And of course, they may be the absolute lowest offer that you're going to get. And I can remember not that long ago, about a year ago, when people were like, "You know what? I'm willing to sacrifice a little bit of cost because I want to have a good experience." My real estate agent is saying like, "Hey, this is where it's at." I've gone and I've looked at online reviews and I can see that people are, and this is a big purchase. Like when you're purchasing a home, you even if everything goes well with your figures, if like closing gets moved and all, like it just sucks, right? You don't want to buy a home and then go, "Oh my God, I'm glad that's over."
Yeah.
Right.
Those are some of the sort of annoyance things that can happen. But we have seen many buyers literally left at the altar by a big national lender who
Right.
suddenly went, we changed our mind. You don't qualify like 2 weeks before closing. And, if you're picking someone local that knows you well, that's really delved into what's going on, that doesn't happen.
Right.
And there's no real consequences for them to just sort of say, sorry, oh, I know you're under contract and you may lose your earnest money. Too bad, so sad. Adios. So,
I mean, I have a theory about that, and it's been one that I've had for like 4 or 5 years, and it hasn't come to fruition. So maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like at some point in time, mortgage is going to become its own separate entity, as servicing mortgages is currently its own separate entity. So what I mean by that is, I mean, you guys see it all the time. There are companies out there that their sole source of employment is to do nothing but service loans.
right.
They do not originate loans. They don't refinance loans. They just service loans. And 10, 15 years ago, if you were doing that mortgage as a lender, you serviced it.
Right.
You collected escrow. You were the customer service representative and all of that. And those two things, I mean, don't get me wrong, there are some bigger banks that still lend and service, but for the most part, majority of servicing is done by third-party servicing companies. And I kind of have been saying this, and again, it hasn't happened, so maybe I'm going to be wrong, but there's something about the mortgage part of it that I really feel is going to eventually become something that bigger banks are just going to give up. Like it's too intricate. There's too much regulation. There's too many moving parts. Like, sure, will they be like maybe an investor? Yes, but like same thing as, a lender, servicer. It's like I think that mortgage is eventually going to become something like, are you a mortgage lender, right? Is that all that you do?
Right.
Because as you said, like going into your local bank and saying, "Hey, I want to get a mortgage." I don't know very many people that have good experiences, and it's not just like one big local bank. I mean, that's just, I almost feel like they're currently doing mortgages as a courtesy to their clients more than, for profit.
Right. Right. Well, the advantage they have is sort of the customer relationship.
Right.
So for them, it's easier to get that business than for a standalone mortgage broker,
Of course.
who has to go hustle and meet real estate agents and get the name out and all that sort of stuff. So they have a ready pipeline. It'll be curious to see if people try and commoditize that and sort of say, sure, we'll hook you up with, this mortgage broker, and then let them run with it, and you get some
That's
kind of
interesting.
kind of referral fee off of it. I don't know. Like the local credit unions have been super aggressive about doing mortgages. So
Well, that's a different entity. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
credit union is a little different because, of course, they've got actual money backing, and
Right.
they need to get rid of it.
yeah,
Yeah.
right,
Like if they don't lend it,
yeah,
they're technically nonprofit.
yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
So that's a little different. I'm thinking of bigger banks.
yes,
Yeah. But I hear what you're saying.
yeah. I mean, we typically, if somebody has a buyer has a really weird situation, that we know is not going to fit into, the Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac
The box.
box,
Right.
then there are a few local banks that do hold notes in their own portfolio,
Sure.
and they sometimes can be more flexible. But otherwise, if you've got unusual circumstances, like go to a mortgage broker, they can really guide you to the best solution
Yeah.
that's going to make it work for you.
Yeah.
you know.
Well, do you guys have anything else you want to cover?
Anything else?
I'm talked out.
Talked out. Well, I encourage you guys to do a quick promo for Midtown. I mean, we'll cut it in the end. That's typically what I've been telling everybody to do. Tell me why I want to work with Midtown.
Do it, Doug. You're
Well,
so good.
So Midtown Title has been around for almost 17 years. We have a depth of experience that really goes in both the commercial as well as the residential areas. We have escrow officers that are highly seasoned, and we've seen so many unusual circumstances and found ways to make it work. We really do pride ourselves on the customer service we offer. If you take a look at our Google reviews and our Yelp reviews, you'll see we have more 5-star reviews than title companies that are 10 times our size. And it's because we really do place such a premium on providing really great, she says, Nordstrom service. And I think it's a good apt description. We go out of our way. And if you look at the reviews too, you'll see why. You'll see, hey, this person came in at Saturday at 7 a.m. and closed us. Oh my God, this escrow officer stayed until 8 o'clock when my lender finally sent the documents and closed me that night. You see that we go above and beyond to really take care of people. And the only other title company I've seen that has more reviews than us, they all appeared within a 2-day period, and they're all 5 stars, and there's no comments written.
Yeah. Well, there it is. Buyers, sellers, real estate agents, lenders. Eventually, those rates will come down, and then we'll be able to send business. Call them.
Thanks so much.
All right,
Thanks,
guys.
Matt.